Hey there, Brian Sommer and Vinnie Mirchandani again with another episode of the Burning Platform for Enterprises. Topic for today is it time for a eulogy for on-premise software? Let's face it, they're ugly, they are risky from a security perspective. No young person wants to touch them. And then more importantly, during the recent pandemic, they just were a pain with all the VPN provisioning. In contrast, cloud applications were just a dream to work with. So, Brian, is it time to say sayonara to on-premise software that you and I grew up with?
Oh, you know it is. And see, I got you smiling. Um, yeah, in fact, there was an analyst call yesterday with a cloud vendor, and again, they were just basically saying the pandemic really brings an end to an era on the on-premise kind of world. That may be a little bit premature, and I might give that answer why a little bit later. I don't want to take any of your thunder away from you, Vinny. But bottom line is, besides those provisioning points that you brought up, it was really difficult for a lot of people to do work on-premise systems when they were mandated to be out of their offices. Governments ordered their business buildings shut down, and some of the functions that we saw that were particularly impacted were included things like payroll software. If you didn't have a virtual, or excuse me, a public cloud kind of way to access the system, how did you enter in employees' time? How did you do mass hirings, mass layoffs, across the board pay cuts across large numbers of people? It was really difficult to do that. And, and the cloud solutions, many of them even come with self-service applications for workers and employees. It was a tough time the last few months for on-prem. And I think it really convinced a lot of people it's time to move on.
So, Brian, maybe I'm being a little nostalgic, but you and I have worked on mainframe McCormick and North systems, System 38, RPG, JD Edwards, and other systems. My God, we have touched a whole bunch of old code. So I'm not ready to give up yet. Instead of a eulogy, I think it's time for a long goodbye. And I think there's a couple of reasons. One is the reality is most of the cloud software tends to be back office, right? You can get financials, you can get HR, you can get CRM, a few other back office applications. But none of the industry applications, could be utility billing, could be retail merchandising, could be airline reservation systems. The cloud hasn't even attempted that. You go around the world in geographies, the cloud doesn't support so many countries. So that's one reason I hesitate to say bye-bye to on-premise that quickly. And secondly, honestly, cloud vendors haven't planned the conversion, the migration in an automated fashion. They kind of like throw it over to systems integrators and say, here, help each customer at a time migrate. Not a very efficient way to move away from clouds. So I think it's going to be a long goodbye. Why are you so convinced it's more imminent?
Well, you also forget that with all that on-premise stuff, it does require a data center and people to maintain and patch and upgrade systems. And that also includes patching and upgrading all the system software and everything else to go with it. So the price tag on maintaining all that on-premise stuff, it's significant. Now, I will concede that the vertical apps are some of the last ones that have been rewritten for public cloud kinds of cases, and that is a bit of a challenge. But do not underestimate the price tag that goes along with all that other stuff. Plus, there's that also handsome 22 to 25% annual maintenance fee you got to pay on all that really old code too, that just doesn't get upgraded 2 to 3 times a year like many of the cloud apps that we deal with.
You make a great point. So how about this as a compromise, Brian? How about we do lift and shift to a hyperscaler? How about if you call Rob Enslin at Google or Satya at Microsoft and say, move my on-premise, get me out of the data center business. I'll use your data center. I'll use your highly secure facilities. I'll use your everything, provisioning, so on. Just move on-premise stuff over there. And by the way, how about if I call my friendly Rimini salesperson and say, can you support me? Can you support my customizations? And how about that combination? And I understand it won't be multi-tenancy. It will still be the ugly system. Users will still have to live with that. But it seems like a short-term way to preserve some of the functionality that cloud doesn't provide today.
It's a stopgap solution for sure. And I would agree with even going third-party maintenance with Spinnaker, Rimini, and others, that gets you somewhat of the way there. But all that kind of presupposes that you will be eventually moving away from that in time. As a stopgap, I would agree with that. There are some vendors, Oracle recently had an announcement where they're going to make available their autonomous database, their cloud infrastructure, and other things available on their cloud in a box technology so that people can get if you will, the peace of mind of a private cloud solution, but it gets you all the automated updates and security management, everything else that comes with a public cloud solution. So options exist, but the old guard has got to go. Anyway, any suggestions, Vinny, on what clients ought to be doing going forward?
What I would say is let's push the cloud vendors. They've had 20 years, right, Brian? You can't, how much you keep finessing your back office functionality. Why don't you get into some serious operational areas? Pick a few verticals. You don't have to be in 50 verticals. You can pick 2, 3, 4, but in the next few years, get serious about that stuff, right? And then the other thing I would say is think about automation, guys. Systems integrators are expensive. And today, no facility manager is going to let 10, 15, 20 unknown consultants walk into your facility, given how sensitive people are about reopen protocols and hygiene and so on. So that would be one big ask of cloud vendors. The second thing would be, let's beat up on the on-premise vendors. They've had, like you say, the 20, 25% for God knows how long with not delivering much more. So I would say it's time to get tough with both sets of vendors, but put a horizon, the long goodbye has to end by, say, 2025. That would be my advice.
Well, let's wrap this with some counsel for our listeners. And without being redundant, I would say you need to have a sunset plan in mind. You can agree to disagree with Vinny and I on anything about the timing, but set a calendar, set a sunset date, and make it happen. There's no question about that. You need to move off of that old stuff. It's just a bone anchor. What we also learned out of the pandemic is that you need systems that will scale up and down. And that's another problem with these on-prem solutions is your data centers don't scale well either direction, and neither did your applications and the licenses. So look to build a new level of flexibility in there. Look for new kinds of vendors and leaders in there. And we're both agreeing, put the screws to the vendors and get them to be more responsive for your vertical and the scaling that you need both directions.